Right, guys, let's get down to it. Chelsea are away to Liverpool this weekend, or Liverpool are hosting Chelsea, and there is something in the air around this one. There are multiple reasons why. Let's start off with the fact that Chelsea's youth academy have banned Liverpool's youth academy from coming to scout their players after Liverpool were interested and have taken one of their great players, and some other good players too are interested. It's an interesting development. It's certainly not the height of Liverpool's rivalry with Chelsea, but it feels like we're reigniting something here. It feels like the sleeping rivalry that for a little while felt like, well, you know, Chelsea aren't really all that right now. They're tactically in the mist, players-wise, they're still putting something together. Suddenly, Chelsea feel like a bit more of a force, and Liverpool have this unknown element of, and I'm very at pains to say this, I also don't really like saying it, Liverpool haven't really faced a great force this season, and there are a lot of people who are doing that basically on place in the table. You know, they haven't faced anyone who's in the top half of the Premier League. Well, they have faced AC Milan, they have faced some difficult sides in the Champions League, or at least sides who you'd imagine are a bit more of a challenge. But what they haven't really done is face someone who can try to outthink them tactically, try to outdo them tactically, try to put them in a position where they have to think and figure out the opposition outside of probably Nottingham Forest. And even then, was it really about figuring out, or was it just about battering your way through that opposition team? And that's where Chelsea are going to pose a really interesting task, I guess, for Liverpool. I think especially if you look at the Premier League table right now, obviously with Liverpool's miserly, it's not measly, it's miserly defensive record, where they have reduced the amount of shots they've conceded, they've reduced the amount of goals that they've conceded. Overall, they just look like they're trying to minimise the opposition in a very different way to the way that they did in the Klopp era. Sure, the pressing is still there, but at the other end, you know, it looked like there was a bit more of a unit that was less about the chances that Alisson would concede, and there's more about what are we going to do overall here? First of all, makes me feel very differently about Alisson being out and Kelleher coming in and Yaros being the backup to that. That feels okay. Obviously, you'd always want the best goalkeeper in the world in Alisson, but with two of the guys who hold this record for this season so far in that back line, I feel all right about that. Chelsea, on the other hand, they've conceded 8 and scored 16. So they've scored more than Liverpool, only by 3, and that was probably due to the game against Wolves where they absolutely went off. And it wasn't really down to, I mean, Chelsea are obviously fantastic. I will mention more about that in a minute. But it was more about Wolves just conceding a lot of goals and then shutting up shop after that for the rest of the season. But, you know, that's kind of like average at this point in the season. That's basically a goal a game. Not so terrible. And with that, they'll have outscored everyone 2-1. Now, I'm not saying, therefore, that they would have won every game 2-1, because there were other games where it was a lot more balanced away from Chelsea. But they've taken some time to work themselves out, and I really feel like Maresca is beginning to worry other managers, or at least beginning to worry other people now who weren't aware of what Maresca was doing. I think a lot of other managers probably would have been aware of what Maresca was capable of, and also what Chelsea were capable of. But they've also got some standout performers, and I think that kind of worries me a little bit, right? Of course, we want to talk about Cole Palmer. Of course, there are, like, you know, 10 out of 10 performances that he's put in so far. There's the talk about him being the best player in the Premier League. I definitely think he's the most eye-catching player in the Premier League. What you mean by best and output, I think, are like two different things. And I think that's what makes Chelsea such an interesting matchup, right? Like, you know, we've seen Madueke this season. If I go back and look at the Wolves game, which I'm going to go back one page, but if I go back and look at the Wolves game and all of the goals that Noni Madueke scored, they were all good goals, but in fact, there were also goals that possibly Liverpool could have conceded. We've seen similar goals against AC Milan, where, you know, it was wide for Pulisic going through, scored from that angle. Maybe the width attack at Liverpool is a way to go. I think there is certainly some merits in that against this side, especially considering you've got the core centre-back pairing, and then you have just the two very attacking, but susceptible to the counter-attack, susceptible to movement, fullbacks. You know, I think it's well acknowledged now that Trent is the best attacking right back in the world. He's certainly a fantastic player, but Liverpool play and leave him slightly more open. Maybe not as open as the Klopp days, but certainly slightly more open. And I think it leaves Liverpool, vulnerable to a brilliant moment or a moment of inspiration from someone like Cole Palmer or Madueke. If he gets away, he's got a good finishing record. But on the other side of that, and I think it's really worth acknowledging this at this point, Nicholas Jackson came into this season maybe slightly underestimated. Not because I think everyone thought, oh, he's a terrible player, but more because it looked as if Chelsea were interested in other players and alternatives to him. I think in modern football, you obviously need more alternatives to a lot of people. Everyone needs to be able to rotate positions. And of course, I think there's like a lot of need in the modern game for rotation, as many managers have been speaking about. And also Maresca himself, when buying all these different wingers and attacking options, there was a lot of talk about, I don't just want another body that plays the same way out there, I want someone who's a little bit different. So when you're playing Pedro Neto out there, when you're playing Sancho, when you're playing Madueke, when before they were playing Sterling, and obviously they got rid of him, when you're playing Palmer and you could rotate him inside, when you've got Nicholas Jackson making those last line runs, there's a lot of different options in there for you to pick from. And if you have like a midfield, which is essentially Cole Palmer, dropping a little bit deeper. You see him taking up really weird positions game to game. But that's alongside Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, a double pivot that I think feels more formidable than the other ones that Liverpool have faced so far this season. It makes you interested. I also think what's interesting about this is, right, I've not even mentioned Jadon Sancho yet. Incredibly creative player. Potentially a big game player as well. The same goes for Cole Palmer. The same goes for Jackson. The same goes... We'll be interested to see what Madueke is like. Will Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo, especially Caicedo at one point being subject to a bid from Liverpool, be upping their game in that midfield? Will it be that another double pivot sees Liverpool's double pivot of Gravenberch and someone else and begins to think, well, you know, maybe we want to put our name on the best midfield of this season? And I think post-international break, it certainly makes it interesting for Liverpool. To some extent, I think Arne Slot has put a bit of a target on his own back at this point in the season by saying, don't judge me now, judge me in 4 weeks. Mainly because the English press will probably run with that. At the time of the quote, people go, yeah, fair quote. Say in a couple of weeks, if there's been some harmful losses or some shaky performances or even just a couple of changes within the team, you know, you will expect to pick up a couple of knocks here and there. We saw obviously a few people coming back from the international break. Maybe things change then. And I think there's some merit in saying, yes, we should be judging on a slot, but I think he makes a good point as well. Don't judge a team by a week, don't judge a team by a month, judge them over the long term. The more information you have about a team, the better you'll be able to judge them. And that's why a season is 38 games and not just 4, 10 or whatever. And obviously the Champions League and a cup tournament is very different. He's talking about sustainability, and I think a lot of people have been looking over the numbers in the international break. I read an amazing Sam Maguire article about how Liverpool are reducing the opposition chances, how they're trying to maximise what the chance the goalkeeper has of saving it, but also they're trying to reduce the angle of what the opposition can get on Liverpool's goal, and that is having a big impact on A, conceding 2 goals this season, at least in the Premier League, and B, they're also sitting 2 people just in front of that, which makes Liverpool not inherently more defensive, but shape-wise able to cancel out more of what the opposition want to do. That is a phase in football where we're at right now, where this shape works because of what the opposition manager is trying to play. Maresca is a very progressive thinker. He's a manager who's very possession heavy. His pressing, as we've seen, can work really effectively against opposition. Liverpool, I think, we've not struggled against the press, but we've definitely struggled to work out a couple of people's ideas of pressing. And also with Maresca's passing at the back, not only have we struggled when people press us, or we've had ways of working it out, but that's not always worked. Manchester United's first phase of pressing was great. Second phase, it went completely to pot. Goes the other way, right? AC Milan, early on in the game, were bypassing Liverpool's press quite quickly because their goalkeeper had a very simple pass out where they'd worked out, hey, Liverpool press like this is the best way to bypass this. Doesn't mean that therefore your defence is completely ineffective. It just means that the press has been bypassed onto the next phase of play. But I'd imagine that Liverpool as a team look at that and go, right, how can we minimise that? And there was a lot of press conference questions today about, over the international break and now with the set of data that managers will have to look at from the games that Liverpool have played, but also where Arne Slot has played previously, there's a set of data to work out how Liverpool will play. I think that's fair enough, right? Like, obviously it's, every manager is probably going to have more data than we've ever had. There's probably probability models. There's loads of people feeding them, even just minor details that they've observed. These things are really important. But at the same time, I'm talking about, the separating factors of Cole Palmer, Jadon Sancho, these kind of things. Those guys have been away on international duty themselves. Alexis McAllister missed a game for Argentina, as was spoken about today in the press conference. Kostas Tsimikas only played 1 game for Greece. Trent now has had 3 man-of-the-match performances for England, possibly not helping us with his case for moving away from the club, but maybe adding to his value if Liverpool do choose to cash in January. Not that I think they will, but you get my point. And overall, I think we're looking at a team, partially the things that Liverpool have to compete with is A, amount of fixtures, but B, and I think this is really key here, having the leaders in your team means that those leaders are going to have to go elsewhere and lead. it's really important to just look at the way that Liverpool's squad is made up and see, A, the bonding that is going on at this point as the dynamics change within the team, new leaders come forward, new personalities, new profiles are working out for the side, and therefore, they're going to be up in confidence. That means the leaders and where the emphasis in the team is going to shift. But also, I was saying this to a friend of mine this morning, right? Take Curtis Jones, for example. In a Jurgen Klopp midfield, you look at it and go, where does he fit into this? How does he fit into this? Does he work on that left-hand side? He doesn't really work on that right-hand side because we had Jordan Henderson in there or we had Harvey Elliott in there. He doesn't work in a 6. Now there's many more profiles and 3 very distinctive profiles for him to work out as the 10, as the 8. Possibly, is he a new kind of 6? Like, could we use him as a more possession-based 6 who's better with his distribution and carrying of the ball? We've seen Gravenberch revert to a role that he seems a lot more comfortable with rather than the 8 that he was asked to play under Jurgen Klopp, or the 6 he would have been even asked to play under Jurgen Klopp. And now he's much more of like that 6 pushing forward, and he's got someone in Alexis McAllister who plays alongside him and is very able to enable him in that. And McAllister was very good at that with someone he's probably going to face on the weekend if he plays in Moises Caicedo. And obviously there's Enzo Fernandez who he plays with in the national team. One guy from Brighton, one guy from Argentina. So there's going to be a lot of familiarity in there as well. I want to see how those two cancel each other out. Obviously overall you've got some injuries in there for Liverpool. Alisson won't start in that back line. I'd expect this Chelsea team, despite knowing they're facing a very good goalkeeper, to try to trouble someone like Kevin Kelleher. I would expect Konate and Virgil van Dijk to start this one. And there was something in the Dutch press about the Liverpool Dutch players taking some time off. What I found very interesting and illuminating in the press conference today, especially for the Dutch players, was the honesty and the frank nature of the way that Arne Slot spoke about players taking time off during the international break, how normal that was, but also how Dutch players get extra criticism in the Dutch media because the Dutch media just loves criticizing individuals. And there is a lot of regurgitated stuff in the English press about how they're getting this bad press at home, but very little contextual stuff around that. Fair enough. I just think what it shows is, really as Liverpool fans, we know how to judge this team right now. I think there is a quiet optimism, but an apprehensive nature to, we hate losing to Chelsea. I hate facing Chelsea. That goes all the way back to the Mourinho days, but before that, when it was the Vialli days and even the Ruud Gullit days, when they were much more of a guy punching up. Now they seem like much more of a guy punching across. But also just the equivalence in quality. There are world-class players in there who have the ability to change a game. Liverpool will equally be able to attack that back line. There was Malagusto and obviously Marc Cucurella on the other side. Levi Colwell, someone we were allegedly looking at, though I'm less and less sure we were actually looking at that in the summer now, considering the contract situation, and Wesley Fofana in that back line. And then, of course, Sanchez. I think Sanchez has been putting in a lot better performances for Chelsea, but I still think Chelsea see an alternative to him. Having said that, there have been some incredible moments for him in recent games, and it's only going to feed into the myth surrounding any goalkeeper. Of course, I think Liverpool will be rolling into this one with some momentum. They're top of the league, which is obviously fantastic. I'd imagine they'll be disappointed that they haven't won every game so far this season. But there is a worry about this, where it's international break, back of that. Historically, that's not fantastic. Thank God it's not a 12:30 post-international break. It's on the Sunday, it's a bit later in the day. I'm going to be covering some of that. It's also about to go into a massive run. Are players going to be looking to conserve energy? How are they going to be speaking about the energy they need to conserve, their rotation, all these kind of things going into this? I think we're going to see how, from this game, front foot Liverpool are going to be. But we're also going to see what control means, I think, a lot more to this Arne Slot team. And when it comes down to controlling games, we've seen him vary the amount of possession that Liverpool have and try to manage the game state, which team is more attacking, which one isn't, and try to work out the other side in a lot more of a tactical manner than just buffer, and we've hit them. There are moments where Liverpool feel incredibly intense, but you can feel them constricting a lot more, and it feels a bit more like almost the Liverpool from a couple of years ago when they were just controlling the games to the 1-0 wins and the 1-0s and those kind of things. And as reassuring as that is, feels very different to the end of the end of the Klopp era, the beginning of the Slot era. And so things are changing a lot. The analysis that we do, the ideas that we have of this team are changing. The profiles, that with Ryan Gravenberch, that with all these players, confidence is changing in certain positions. Roles are changing. So, when Gravenberch gets on the ball now, it's going to be very different to when he would have been getting on the ball in the Klopp era. So It's pretty interesting just to look at where Liverpool are at. Yes, I think we'll be able to probably put some more judgments in after this weekend. We'll see whether that back line was ripped apart or whether they stood the test or whether we're also somewhere between that. Playing a good side isn't about just being like analog or digital, where it's like digitally we're either good or bad. There is a scale to this. There's like a grey scale for Liverpool right now, and I think we'll see where they sit on that scale. I think we're also going to see how confident Liverpool genuinely feel. Obviously, I think it's one of the first big games at Anfield this season where, you know, the crowd are really going to have one of those influences. I saw a really interesting, it was quite interesting actually. You realise the influence of a coach now. Like, under Klopp, it would have felt a lot more direct. Under Pep, it feels a lot more direct. Erik Ten Hag is often credited with a lot of things, but actually his relationship feels a bit more passive with the side. And the same goes for Slot. Like, how passive is he? How direct is he? How visible is his relationship with the players? I think we're seeing a difference in their demeanour, the way they conduct themselves, all these kind of things. But what's pretty fascinating about it for me in particular is seeing the difference between the Slot era and the Klopp era and Slot and other managers who've just come in. Slot, I think, is getting judged by a weird metric. A lot of people don't know how to judge Liverpool. A lot of people seem to be judging Liverpool by last season's standards, or they seem to be holding off on judgment and really just sort of being quite neutral. It's very difficult, obviously, to criticise a big profile side because you don't want to get the abuse online, or you don't want loads of people piling on, or just sort of not coming back for your article or your video. But at the same time, I don't think there are many people out there who know how to judge Liverpool right now. I'll be honest, I would expect a lot of other sides to come and try and see what Liverpool are made of. What is their substance right now? What is the constitution of this team? How much can we test it? How much can we worry Anfield? If we go out there and get on the front foot, how can we push Liverpool back? If we don't start Mac and Grav, I'll be interested to see how that midfield dynamic works. That would be my preferred starting side. What happens with Szoboszlai? A lot of people were questioning him. We rotated him. I think we might see him come back. I think that's our preferred midfield three. Trent obviously played a lot of the international break. I think he's still going to play. I also think we probably want to maximise the amount of time he has to play if Liverpool are beginning to accept this idea that he's going to leave. You know what my back line is. You know it goes Kelleher, Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and Robertson. I don't think it'll be Tsimikas. Grav, Mac, Szoboszlai, and then we've got these like comparisons. I'm going to do a combined 11 tomorrow. Jota in the middle, Diaz, Salah. There is a possibility that we start. I don't think we start Darwin Núñez. There is a possibility we start a different 10. I don't think we'll start Chiesa. There is a possibility we start a different 10, but I think that front three will be Salah, Jota, Diaz. I think Cody Gakpo will be used as a sub. I think I will be interested to see how we rotate the midfield and rotate the shape as the game goes on. Because you've got two managers who are very possession-based. There's a bit of cancelling out of each other here. I think they're both thinkers. There is an element of kind of like Benitez and Mourinho here where they're trying to like, oh, I'm going to tweak here and then you're going to tweak here and we'll see where the emphasis goes. I look forward to seeing what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I think we've covered a lot there. Obviously, it's post-international break. I lost my voice this week, so I wasn't really able to talk. I look forward to hearing what you guys think the game is going to be like. Join me on Sunday. Join me for the combined 11. And I will see you guys right here on the Laurence McKenna channel very soon. Much love.